Hi everyone, this is Mary, you're in Mary Reads. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to talk to you about the books that we discussed in my book club. So this is more of like a book chat actually. I think that's the official name of the event. So this is when we all get together and talk about our favorite book of the month. So we don't have anything assigned to read, we just read whatever. And then we talk about the best book, or maybe the book that you've just finished. So the last book you finished. And I thought it's going to be very interesting because everybody in this book club is different. I'm in my early 20s. We have a guy or two guys in their early 30s. We have ladies in their early 50s, maybe early 60s. And then we have a lady and a gentleman who are in their late 70s, early 80s, I think, somewhere around that. So you can imagine that we all read very different things. And a lot of books that I've heard about, I wouldn't even read, I wouldn't even think about if it wasn't for the book chat. So I want to share the most interesting books from the last 2 or 3 months of book chats, just to give you an idea of what books we talk about, and maybe for you to find something new for yourself that you didn't expect you could like. And the first book has a very long name, so let me just read it. The Last Ride of the Pony Express, My 2,000-Mile Horseback Journey into the Old West by Will Grant. So this book was written by a journalist who decided to recreate the route that Pony Express couriers took, 200 years ago. So he goes from Missouri to California on horse. I think he had 2 horses that he kept switching, so one would carry him, another one would carry the bags. He talks to people who he meets on the route, like farmers or ranchers, or sometimes even historians who tell him more about this Pony Express route. He is sometimes meeting with his girlfriend, so she travels on a train, I think, and they meet every once in a while. He talks about how hard it is to ride on your horses, how to keep them together, because there are multiple ways of keeping the horses from running during the night. So he explores all of these different ways. And of course, he tells the story of Pony Express. It is very interesting. It had the person who read it during the book chat mentioned that there were a lot of interesting and fun facts. Some of them were actually said. For example, the fact that Pony Express hired a lot of orphans because if they died en route, and some of them did because it had to be a very fast ride because it was an express mail delivery. So they had to ride very fast in any weather. It was hard to get food sometimes. So they would hire orphans so that in case something happened to them, nobody would be looking for them. So there are a lot of these interesting facts that the author shares with us. And I actually got interested in this book. I think I might be reading it at some point. I'm not a huge fan of nonfiction, but this is something that I'm considering reading. The next book is Erasure by Percival Everett, and you might have heard about Percival Everett if you've watched my Booker Prize video, because his novel James was nominated for the Booker Prize. So this is a fairly complicated novel. I'll try to explain it as best I can, because for me it's still a little bit of like this complicated web of events. So the novel talks about a writer. He is this intellectual. He writes literary papers and he has a name for himself, but he's not that known. So he's not a commercial success. Not a lot of people read him. And he refuses to write this ghetto literature. That's what it's called. That's what they called it in a book, in the explanation of what the book is, in the description. So he refuses to write this ghetto literature. And he doesn't want to be commercial. But everything changes when he sees a talk show with another author who talks about her book, and he decides to write his own commercial project as a satirical response to that book. And his novel becomes a hit right away. He gets a lot of money because this huge publishing house wants to have a contract with him. He also sells rights for a movie. And this money changes his life because he can now take care of his mother, who has a progressing Alzheimer's disease. And in that sense, the money is great. But he sees the other side of this money when people start wanting to meet him. And what I forgot to mention is that he wrote his novel under a pseudonym. So he was not writing under his own name. So nobody knows who wrote the novel. And people start wanting to meet him. Talk show hosts ask him to come to their program. And then movie people, the people who are writing a movie based on his book, want to also meet him. And he has to create this character who talks to press, who talks to talk show hosts, who is not our main character, basically. I don't know if he just kind of calls them with the phone and never shows his face, or how it works, but it's kind of exploring the two sides of the same medal. When you have a lot of money and it makes your life great, but at the same time it brings a lot of different negative events and situations. It felt like an interesting novel. I might be reading it. I can't say that it interested me a lot. I'm not entirely sure this would be my thing, but I might be reading it. I might take it and check it out, at least read the first 100 pages and see if it interests me. But the person who read it mentioned that it was amazing, and actually they mentioned that James, by Percival Everett as well, was also great. So if you're thinking about Percival Everett and you're considering taking his novels, try. I think that it would be a great choice if you're interested in his work. The next book is The Personal Librarian by Marie Benedict. I think this is more known book. I've seen it in a couple of bookstores. I've heard about it. But this is based on a real story. This novel tells us about a life of Belle DaCosta Green, I think. Might be mispronouncing the name. So JP Morgan hired her to be his personal librarian. So he started his library and he asked her to curate the library, get new rare materials, take care of the artwork in that library. And she basically took over that library. And she was known in New York. She was a very powerful lady. She was known by a lot of people because of her good eye and the ability to negotiate for great works, great books. And so she had a very big place in the society. But she had this one secret that she had to keep from everybody. So she was actually a daughter of, I think, Richard Greener. Might be wrong again. He was the first Black graduate of Harvard. And of course, she was surrounded by white people. And if I understand correctly, we face the question of racism here, because the society people lived in back then was the one of not being tolerant to other races. So I think to keep her place in the society, she has to cover the secret, keep the secret, and make sure that nobody knows about her heritage. And why people think that she's white is because she had some relatives, Portuguese or something. So her skin was light, and nobody thought that her father is actually a Black person. I'm not sure if I'm interested in this book because topics of racism are not my favorite in books. I do not like them a lot. I feel like often they're kind of trying to teach me. They're kind of trying to show me that I don't know something, and they're trying to explain to me how to be tolerant, which I don't think I have a problem with. So I usually try to avoid these books, but the setting of the library and understanding that it was based on a real story makes me very interested. So I'm considering reading this book. And I also wonder how accurate it is, because I've noticed that a lot of adaptations or a lot of novels that are based on real stories are kind of changed quite a bit to kind of fit into this commercial market, and I don't know if it's going to be good, if it's going to be accurate. So if you've read this book, let me know first if it's accurate, and second, if the book is trying to teach you how to be tolerant, or there is no this kind of teaching point in the book. The next book is actually the one that I do want to read, even though it's nonfiction. It's called Manhunt, the 12 Days Chase for Lincoln's Killer, a very long name, by James Swanson, I think. Fairly confident that's the name. So this is a nonfiction, as I understand. And it talks about the 12 days that the Union troops and detectives were trying to find Lincoln's killer. So it's basically the story of this hunt, like hunters versus the hunted. And the story is told from both points of view. And we follow both the detectives and the assassin through different states while he's trying to run away from justice. And it's set in post-Civil War US, right after Civil War. And what I think is very interesting about this book is that it is based on very rare materials and the transcripts of the questioning of the assassin. And if I understand correctly, it's nonfiction, but it might be just historical fiction that is based on all of this archived materials. I'm not sure, but I do want to read this book because I found this very interesting, and I think the person who read this book and told us about it really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to getting that book from the library. The next one is The Queue by Vladimir Sorokin. This is a Soviet writer. And what's very interesting about this book is that I didn't know about this book until this one of the book chat members told me about it. So this is a book that's set in this period of stagnation in Soviet Russia in 1980s. I think the novel was written in 1983. It was published in France in 1985 because it was banned in Soviet Union. So what's very interesting about it is that it captures this atmosphere of people standing in lines. So where this is coming from. In Soviet Union, people used to stand in lines for a very long time to get something because there were not enough of certain things. For example, I remember my grandma was standing in line for tights for my mom or for a jacket. You could stand in line for a TV or a certain piece of furniture. So that was a thing. You would stand in lines. And this book is set in a line, in a queue. People are standing in line, and it's to the point where there are thousands of people standing in this line. Nobody knows anymore what this line is for, what people are waiting for, what do they want to get. There are all of these different rumors about what might be at the end of the line. And of course, because people have to wait for so long, they start thinking, what is it? What are we waiting for? You have a lot of different theories flying around. Then you have people who start talking to one another and they tell stories of their lives. And if I understand correctly, this is going to be a bunch of kind of short stories that happen in this line, and we'll learn more about the people. I think this is going to be very interesting. I really want to read the book. And the person who read it was actually that lady who is in her 80s or late 70s. She said that it was great. She really enjoyed it. There were a lot of interesting stories. And I think that it's going to be something very good. So if you like the atmosphere, and if you like books that just have a lot of stories from different people about telling about their lives, I think this might be something for you. And finally, one dark academia book that was not read by me. I did not read it. I'm not sure if I want to, but I might. So it's a dark academia book, The Cloisters by Katie Hayes. And this is the book set in the Cloisters of Metropolitan Museum. And it talks about this young girl who becomes an assistant in this research at the Met. And they put her in, well, not in charge, but on a team that works in the Cloisters. And this is this very kind of gothic, spooky part of the Metropolitan Museum. I've actually never been there, might want to go. So they start doing their research, and they find this 15th century deck of tarot cards, and they assumingly predict future. You can read future with them. And so she, the main character, gets more and more obsessed with this deck, and it looks like other team members are also obsessed with it, and there is a murder, not sure who is murdered, and somehow we are trying to reveal this whole mystery. I don't know if I like the tarot cards vibe. I'm not a huge fan of that, and I feel like it was mostly done because tarot cards were so hyped a couple years ago. So I don't really know how the tarot cards could be found in the Cloisters. It feels like it would make more sense if they found some sort of a plaque with some ancient text and runes, something like that. So I don't know how much I believe in this story from the beginning, but I like the Cloisters setting. I do like that. I think a museum setting is not something that you see very often with dark academia. It's mostly private schools, universities, colleges. So I think that this might be something interesting, but I might try it out. Let me know if you've read this book, and if you've liked it, if that's something worth reading and worth checking out. Or let me know if you were also not sure if you should read this book. I might check it out from the library, read it, and give you a review of the book so we can discuss. And these were all the books that I thought were very interesting from the book chat. Please let me know if you've read any of these books. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.